The time when Dunfermline played host to some of the biggest names in the world of entertainment. Hi, I'm Brian Nobile and welcome to another edition of They Played Dunfermline. Today we look back on one of the most popular bands in the Dunfermline area, and they've been going on for 45 years. Today we speak to the Falcons. The year is 2005 and it's hard to believe that you guys, after all these years, are still basically playing. We're in the company of Bud Heaps and Jimmy Bryce, original members of the Falcons. Welcome, lads. First of all, local band, where were you born and brought up, Jimmy?
In the south. I was born in Hillabith and moved to the south. I was a 5-year-old. Lived there all my life.
Peter, I'm led to believe that you're a Dunfermline boy?
Yeah, but I was born and bred in the south, brought up in the south, and then moved up to Dunfermline and stayed up there till the rest of my life. I've been there for 35 years now. Before we talk about the actual band itself, what were your early influences?
For me it was skiffle, and then when the Shadows come along, that was it. You know, everybody was Hank. You were up in the bedroom with the old tennis racket and everything. It was brilliant, and that's it. And then just as the years went on, all the time just changed and played whatever was, you know, the current vogue at the time, you know.
Yeah, used to listen to the new tunes that came out in that week, and we would practice that number and then play it that night.
Go to the ballroom, Go to the ballroom and used to rehearse in
the ballroom.
Rock and roll a big influence on you?
Yeah.
Elvis was,
everybody was. Marty Wilde, Joe Brown, everybody.
Everly Brothers.
They were great.
Their favourites at the time.
It's true to say that by 1960 the Falcons were born. What can you tell us about the early years of the band?
Well, we used to walk across the park at Rosyth to the Burnside Club with a pram and our amplifiers in the pram.
And we didn't have very much.
Carrying the guitars.
Yeah.
And we used to play a gig and then push the pram back up the road back to the house.
Couldn't afford anything else.
You didn't have bands in these days.
What was the lineup? What was the early lineup?
It was Bristol Love was the singer. There was Bud, myself, and Charlie York was on the drums. And Eric Ritchie. Yeah.
He's now, he was a policeman in Ireland. He flitted to Ireland, moved to Ireland. He went to the Garda.
Before you got your big break, obviously you played a lot of the smaller venues. What venues were available for a young band coming through, you know, to learn their trade?
The Burnside.
The Snake Pit at Rosyth Crossroads.
Snake Pit.
And just...
Dunfermline, what was the one in Dunfermline? St Margaret's.
The Unitas Hall.
St Margaret's.
The Vandals were in St Margaret's at that time, up the stairs, and they were kind of our heroes at the time, weren't they?
That's right, yeah.
We used to go and watch them.
Yeah.
But 1963, the band were really up and coming.
Oh, yeah.
What was the line-up round about then? I think I picked you up down at the Burnt Island Pally, where you were packing them in.
Yeah, that was...
Change the line-up by that time?
There was. Roy Williams was on drums. And
we had Vic Chappelle.
We had Vic Chappelle on rhythm guitar.
And Trevor.
Trevor was the lead singer.
He just died,
Jimmy was lead guitarist and I was bass guitarist.
And it just stayed that way.
We modelled ourselves on the Shadows. We bought pink guitars and had a pink Fender
purple
Precision with purple suits. I've still got my purple suit actually with the F on the pocket. Kept it. I can't get into it now though.
Who was the management team?
Roy Williams was the manager.
Roy Williams.
He arranged all the gigs and things for us. And then Roy became full-time manager, gave up the drumming, and we got Eric Murray from Perth, who used to play with the Earl Blue Stars. And he came down from Perth and he played with us, and we played all over Scotland at that time, all over the place. And we had gigs every week. We had 3-4 gigs a week in 8 days.
You went on to be legends in the Kinema Ballroom. 3 bands that have everlasting memories for people of the Dunfermline area are the Red Rocks, the Chadettes and the Falcons. You're in there. How did it feel playing in the Kinema Ballroom?
It was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. It was a great atmosphere. It was a great atmosphere, and it was always packed. It was fantastic, and you were well liked, you know. So that made a big difference, you know. And even today, we still get people coming up and saying to you, "Do you mind me? I was at the ballroom," saying, "I'm sorry," you know. I mean, all you could see was the people in the front, but you couldn't see individual people as such, you know. Unless you met.
You played in the old Kinema Ballroom. The
Yeah.
KB was revamped in November 1964, but you actually played in the original ballroom,
Yeah.
when the entrance was just underneath us, basically.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when they changed it, we were still playing then, weren't we? When they changed it to the 2 stages and
Yeah.
the downstairs side door.
Yeah,
where
we
you came
used
up
to play in the
stairs.
top stage, and
Yeah.
Red Hawks played another stage, you know, because they was a bigger band, like, you know, more stuff.
What type of music did you play? Could you play music for all ages? Did you do
Yeah.
weddings and
Well, it was
the
usually-
rest of it as well?
Yeah.
It was usually what was in the charts at the time.
Yeah.
If there was a new song came into the charts that week, we tried to learn it for the weekend so that.
But I mean, most people, if they booked us for a wedding and that, they actually knew what we'd, you know,
Yeah.
they had seen the band played, so
Yeah.
they wanted us for that. But I mean, if we went along to a wedding and that, we'd try and learn things to please them, or take a record player and play records, you know, for the Scottish stuff.
As bands do, they don't last forever. Jimmy, you went on to play in a few bands. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember you
Yeah.
really cooking in the clubs and pubs in the
Yeah.
Dunfermline area.
Yeah.
Can you name a few of the bands that you were with?
Copperfield was one of them.
Yeah.
I'm trying to mind the other one. But they were all successful as well, really.
Clubland in the early 70s kind of took over from the likes of the Kinema Ballroom and that. But by that time, you guys were keen to do that, weren't you? It was just,
Well, you had to go to all the clubs. But you weren't as much, Bud, because you were in the Terries at the time.
I
Yes.
left the scene for a while. And I joined the Territorial Army, and I was in the Territorial Army for 23 years, but I took up guitar again about 10 years ago and started playing again.
yeah. And of course, you're still playing, of course, with
Des.
Des and the Dingoes, another legend to come out of that era, Monley down on Island of it. Well, I mean, is there any lasting memories of the bands that you could share with us? Jimmy, first of all?
Something that we couldn't put into print, right?
No,
one
no.
that-
I always think we could write a book. We really could. We could write a book, you know, and some of the things you could tell, you know.
You got your chance, didn't you? I mean, you left the bottom to go abroad, and you did get the
Well,
chance.
yeah.
Tell us about it.
I didn't go because of the work, you know. I mean, I didn't want to lose my job. Just got one child, and so
Yeah, we
I
went
had
over
to.
to, Trevor was there at the time, and we went over to France to play in the American bases, and we played all the American bases over there, and while we were there, we were introduced to a colonel in the American Air Force who was related to Frank Sinatra, and he tried to book us for a club in Las Vegas for a 6-month tour, but Trevor couldn't get out his commitment of being an apprentice. He was indentured in the dockyard at the time, and his father wouldn't allow him to go, so that kind of knocked it on the head, because the guy wouldn't take the band unless it was the lineup he had seen in France. So that was it, knocked on the head.
Do you have any regrets? I mean, both of you are great musicians. Any regrets?
Yeah, well, not as far as the bands go. It's just a personal thing. I think it's very selfish being in the band, because when you think about it, your wife's, she doesn't travel everywhere
Yeah.
with you, and they're in the house every weekend and you're not, you know. So I suppose it's that, you know, the regret all the times you missed, I think, you know. But never, I mean, as far as playing goes,
Far as
not at all.
playing goes.
I think playing the guitar in the band was the greatest thing ever. Keeps you young.
So there's no way you missed the drafty when you're travelling back and forward all over the place in a wee drafty van. You don't miss your days at all.
Hey, when you're young,
Just have a
nothing's
laugh,
impossible,
Everyone
when
was
you're
a
young.
laugh.
We came down through Glen, the
Glenfarr.
aye, mine, and it was so foggy, and we're going around the corners, and I've got my head at the door trying to keep see where the road was, and I was sound asleep, and there was icicles. Sound as found, you know. But
Them were the
so
days.
tired. I mean, playing for 4 hours and travelling for a couple of hours. So
Used to play in the days all night for a fiver.
it was
So
ridiculous.
it wasn't really the money, it was just
No,
more the
no.
music.
Hey.
It was the music.
Of all the years we played, we were skint. Ask my wife, she'll tell you. No, we were. You didn't join the band to make money. That was a laugh. You know what I mean? God, we had so much debt, it wasn't real. I could have got a cheaper mortgage.
Well, all I can say is you're looking great 40 years on, and thanks very much for coming along today. and thanks for taking part in the interview. Thank you.
No problem.
No problem.
My pleasure. Or our pleasure.
Yeah.
Because we're still the greatest of pals. He goes and beats me at darts every week. Go to his house every
Well, I
week.
was the boss anyway, wasn't I?
The year is 2005, and I'm in the company of David Porterfield and Trevor Foster. He's a revamped, brought back to life, much to the pleasure of my generation, the 60s experience. Tell us something about it, Trev.
Well, in actual fact, it all started with the charity show that we did, the celebration of 40 years since the ballroom was enlarged, and which you had a lot to do with. And because of the crowd reaction that night, we sat down afterwards and said, look, there's an audience here. There's an audience that want that kind of music. So we rehearsed for about 6 months, and then in July we put the first of our 60s experience shows together here at the Sinclair Arms, and it was a great success. The place was packed, and it was obvious that the people were crying out for that kind of music. So we've improved the show since then, and we've put more into it, and we've done it. We've only done it 5 times so far, but we're hoping that it's going to take off and really take it places.
It's bread and butter to you, Trev, and it's bread and butter to Davy as well. The 60s experience still give you the same buzz, Davy?
Oh, it's, as long as you pick the right songs, because some of them can be a bit boring at times, but we're managing to get through some good material now.
I think the secret for what we're doing is that we have 3 very strong voices, so we major on harmonies, and there are a lot of stuff in the 60s that had great harmonies. Also, I mean, if you think about that decade, the range of music over that decade, then you really can't lose. You can pick and choose your numbers carefully and suit virtually everybody that liked music in the 60s.
You've brought back the cream, well, you've brought out of mothballs, you could say, the cream of musicians and singers. What is the lineup for the 60s experience, Trev?
Well, on drums we have Tom Allen from Kirkcaldy. He's a professional drummer, always has been. On lead guitar we have Ronnie Lesles, probably the best guitarist this area's ever produced. Rhythm and vocals, Davy here, Davy Porterfield. Myself playing bass and singing as well. So, and on keyboards, we've got Bobby Ross, who played with me back in 69, 70 and then gave up because he took over his dad's taxi firm and hadn't touched a keyboard professionally or semi-professionally even for 30 years. And we managed, when he gave his taxi firm up, we managed to persuade him to come and do some recording sessions with us when we were looking at the 60s stuff. And he enjoyed it so much, he's now in the band and very much a major part of the band.
The Falcons nowadays, as compared to the early Falcons, you guys can actually play anything, and not just the 60s material, but I mean, some of the stuff that you play, you can actually put you into really any kind of venue. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, I think the beauty about what we're doing is that we can do this 60s show, but we can do other music that we love. We love doing rock covers, so we play any venue that we can go to with all these wonderful rock numbers, which I have to say basically suited Davy's voice more than mine, but the band is very, very good at it.
Yeah. Davy, you played a lot of bands in the 60s. 2 that come to mind are the Nameless ones and of course the legendary Argus. Tell us something about the bands.
The Nameless ones, we played in the ballroom in 1964. I had to get my shift changed at the pit. I was a sparky, I'm an apprentice electrician at the pit. I had to get my shift changed to do the gig. But eventually I got thrown out of the band because I wouldn't grow my hair long. They wanted to become this rhythm and blues sort of